there at the kiosk. You can sign up online. However you want to do it, you're able to do it. Pastor will be doing those classes, and those will take place during the Sunday school hour over the next couple weeks before Christmas. So I think they're going to finish up before the Christmas season. So if you're interested in becoming a member, you have an option. You can sign up at the kiosk. You can see Pastor. I'm sure you can see Audrey as well, and they'll get you taken care of. So as I was saying, Pastor approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to preach?" Of course. I said, "Yes, sounds good." Last time I spoke before you guys, I said I would have a message on control. Well, I'm here to tell you that I tried really, really hard to get out of that message. At the time when I preached that last sermon, I was like, yes, I'm going to talk about control. And then as time progressed, I was like, no, I don't want to talk about that, God, please. Mainly the reason why is I didn't really want to have to reflect as I studied and really look at myself. So I tried really, really hard to get out of it. I sat here many Sunday mornings since Pastor asked me to talk, and I'm like, what else can I talk about? What else can I talk about? I want to talk about some people in the Bible that we deem villains, but it's funny because we call them villains, and really it's just people that were like us before we came to Christ, and even to an extent, it's us after we've come to Christ. So I really was praying, like, please let me talk about that. Please lay something on my heart so I can talk about that. And God was like, nope, not happening. So here I am. We're going to talk about control. I knew he was going to make me do it, and I tried really, really hard to get out of it. But I just want you guys to know that this message today is as much about me as it is you. So you're not in this alone. What I talk about and the things that you may pull up. Trust me, I've pulled them up over the past 2 weeks as I got into this. So I really took a look at myself. So before we get into it, I'd like to just pray about it. That way we're covered in prayer before it gets too heavy. So, dear Lord, I pray that you open our hearts and ears that we may examine the areas of our lives that we continue to hold on to, and we know that we should give it to you. Help us not to ignore what you have for us this morning, and help us to be receptive to your Spirit. Draw us into a deeper relationship with you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So like usual, I'm going to start off with a story. My sermon today is entitled Be Less, and you guys will find out why here shortly. But let's start with a story. I love these stories. So once there was a guy named Jack. Jack loved to run. Jack loved to run along a cliff like this, right along the road, where he could really just enjoy the ocean and look out. You know, he put on the Taylor Swift as he's running. And I know you guys don't listen to Taylor Swift. Friends of yours probably do, but not you. You guys are good Christians. You guys probably listen to DC Talk or Crowder or somebody else, you know. But anyways, Jack was just jamming out this morning, and he's running along the cliff. And without knowing, he gets a little too close to the edge, and he slips. As he's sliding down the side of the cliff, he's just grasping for anything he can get a hold of. And eventually he does. He grabs a hold of a little branch that's hanging out of the side. So there's Jack, hanging from the cliff, just holding on as tight as he can to that little tiny branch. And he starts yelling, "Hello up there, can anybody hear me?" And to Jack's surprise, a voice calls back right away. "Jack, can you hear me?" Yes, I can hear you. I'm down here. "I can see you, Jack," the voice called back. "Are you all right?" Jack replied, "Yes, but who are you and where are you?" "I'm the Lord, Jack. I'm everywhere." Jack was confused. "The Lord? Like, you mean God?" God replied, "That's me." Jack delighted. "Oh, God, help me. I promise that if you get me down from here, I'll stop sinning. I'll be a really good person and serve you the rest of my life." God responded, Whoa, easy on the promises, Jack. Let's first get you down, and then we can discuss all those other things." Jack desperately replied, "I'll do anything, Lord. Just tell me what to do." You know, Jack's just hanging there, holding on tight for dear life, and God replies, "All right, let go of the branch." Jack was confused. What do you mean, let go of the branch? "I said let go of the branch. Just trust me. Let go." There was a very long pause as Jack mulled over the offer. In a moment, however, Jack let out a yell. Hello, is there anybody else up there?" All right, let's pray one more time. I think we can end right there. You guys get the illustration, and we can head home. Unfortunately, though, I'm just joking around. I still have 2 more hours of time to fill up, so we're going to be here a minute. But I think most of us here can understand Jack's position, right? I think a lot of us maybe have had that same conversation with God at one point in our lives. So sticking with the current series that Pastor had, we're going to be talking about doubt, and more specifically, how we doubt that God has the ability to control the daily aspects of our life. So in return, we hold on to bits and pieces, plans for our future, and other elements of our lives. Our main verse today, and we're going to look at it quite a bit, and we'll repeat it quite a bit, is John 3:30. He must become greater, I must become less. So as we go about the rest of this sermon, I just ask that you continue to think about that as we talk about these different aspects of control. So the idea of being in control goes way back to Genesis. Most of you guys know the story, Adam and Eve, serpent, the whole thing, right? The serpent tempted Eve, who gave it to Adam, who was complacent in his duty to follow God's commands. And then in turn, he broke the relationship between man and God. Eve blamed the serpent. Adam blamed God for giving him Eve. And the serpent didn't get a chance to pass blame at all. If this took place in today's society, Adam and Eve would have sued the serpent, right? They'd have been like, hey, let's just sue this guy. He messed it all up, right? But this quote from Frank Moore is going to kind of set the tone and be what we talk about a lot. He says, given the option of self-sovereignty or surrender of self-preference to the Creator's will, we choose self-sovereignty. In Adam and Eve's case, free will was exercised. God was disobeyed and blame was passed. It's easy to look at them. You know, we do this all the time. We do this with a lot of people in the Bible. We look at them and go, I wouldn't have done that. Why? I wouldn't listen to that serpent. There's no way I would have done that. Wrong. We probably would have. You know, if we examine our lives, most of us willfully disobey or choose self daily over God's will for our life. We decide we want to do it, how we want to do it. The song, as I wrote that, popped into my head. Frank Sinatra, he wrote a song all about it called My Way. So just give me a second. La, la, la. No, I'm not going to sing My Way for you guys, never mind. I'll spare you the pain of doing that this morning. But most of you know the song, and I don't know about you, but I tried Frank's way quite often. I did all the things I wanted to do, and I wanted to do it my way. Never ended well. So I'm sure if I asked for a show of hands, there are plenty of you in here probably that could raise your hand and said, I tried to do it my way as well. Oswald Chambers said, sin is blatant mutiny against God. Chambers went full-on pirate right there. He did. He went full-on pirate. Mutiny, obviously, is when the crew doesn't like what the captain has to say. They grab the captain. Most times they lock him in the brig or they chuck him overboard, right? So they toss him out of the ship. No longer be there. He doesn't have control anymore of the ship. Many of us do the same thing with God, though. And sometimes we're not really even aware that we're doing it. We make a choice that we know is a sin, or we know that it's against what God has planned for us. And in making the decision to go against it, we grab God. Out of the ship you go, God. I'm in control of this ship. Right? We toss them right out. We choose to put that sin, that choosing to sin puts a distance between us and God. Anytime that we sin or willfully go against what God wants, it creates that distance. Same thing what Adam and Eve did, right? By taking the fruit, they ate it, caused that distance between God and themselves. And so anytime that we defy God's will for our lives and break God's heart, we affirm our preference for self-sovereignty, right? We want to be the ones in control. We want to be the ones to make the decision. So if you guys can say it with me this time, he must become greater, I must become less. So a prime example of someone fully understanding becoming less was the prophet Isaiah. So we're going to look at his story in Isaiah 6, 1 through 8. If you guys want to open up your Bibles, your apps, I'll put it up on the screen as well. But we're going to look at Isaiah 6, 1 through 8, and what Isaiah did when he met the presence of God. So in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on the throne, high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces. With 2 wings they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and whom will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. I love the passage. It's a beautiful picture in general, right? It's just a beautiful image of coming into the presence of the Lord. For me, it's a perfect example of humbling ourselves before God. Isaiah, when he encountered the holy presence of God, he just humbled himself completely. He used 3 very strong words. I don't know if you guys caught that. In the moment when he met God, he said, I am ruined. In that moment that he saw God, he knew, what am I? Here I am nothing. I am ruined compared to this. And so I just find that response so powerful. And at the same time, it makes me feel inadequate to be in the presence of God, receiving his forgiveness, because that's what God did, right? He put the coal on his lips and touched him. You're clean, right? I've forgiven you. And to see that and to have that relationship, to take our hands off the wheel and let God direct. I mean, I am ruined, right? Here I am ruined. I have nothing. It's just powerful words to say before the creator of the universe. I don't know about you, but I would love to have an I am ruined moment. I don't know if I really have yet, and I know God's working on me in that, and I pray for that. And I know some of you may have had an I am ruined moment sitting here right now where you've come completely and said, here I am, Lord. And I'm sure others of you may even be praying that without knowing it, that you're praying also to have that moment where he can become greater and you can become less. What's that a picture of? Does anybody know what that is? What is it? Gold. It is gold. So how many of you have ever seen the process to purify gold? Do any of you know how they do it? No? Okay. I'll get into it. I won't get too deep into it. So it's an interesting process, especially if you like science and chemistry and all this different stuff. So the first thing you have to do is you have to heat the gold up, right? You have to heat it up, melt it. But that's not the end of it, because inside the gold are a lot of impurities. So then they have to pump a gaseous chlorine into the heated gold, which then makes chloride compounds with the impurities, and then those all float to the top. Then they scrape all the impurities off. And then once you scrape the impurities off, then the gold is almost 100% pure. So the reason why I brought this up is it's the same type of process that happens when you accept Christ. And it's a process that will continue to happen until you take your final breath. It's not a one and done type of thing, this process of purification. God's constantly refining us, pointing out the impurities in our lives that need to be removed, and then starting the process to remove them. We have to be willing to let him proceed with the process, though. It's going to hurt. It's not always going to be easy, but sometimes, we're like, okay, God, yes, I want to be purified. I want these things out of my life, but not that much. Okay, don't go so hard on me, right? And sometimes it's going to hurt, and we don't really understand why it's going to hurt. But if you guys can remember back to a couple of weeks what one of his other sermons said, we don't always need to know the why. We don't always need to know the why right now. All we need to do is trust God and let him do the work. So another quote here from Howard Emmerding. He said, the Lord doesn't want the first place in my life. He wants all of my life. Say it one more time. He doesn't want first place in my life. He wants all of my life. Okay? Not the first place, followed by this, and this. Okay? Well, Gary, I've given God everything already. I've done it. Been serving him 10, 20, 30 years. Really? Have you given him all of your life? Have you taken a look at all the things in your life and gone, you know what? I don't really invite God into that aspect of my life. I haven't really invited him into all that. So today's a chance really to reflect on that, right? It's a chance to take inventory of your life and your relationship with God. So most of us were super anxious, right, when we came to God. We had that moment where we're like, I can't do this anymore. God, take it all. I'm done, right? Here it is. And we're just really quick to be free of that guilt and the bondage of sin, and we were willing to sign just about any contract that God put down in front of us, right? We just wanted to be done. Here it is. It's no different than when the money starts to run out and we go, you know what, I need a loan, right? And you're quick to sign the loan. It's no different than that. It's after the initial conversation with God, though, that the process starts. And that's when he begins to clean up all of our life's areas, our actions, our thoughts, our attitudes, our motives, our reactions, our possessions, habits, everything else that you can think of. It's after that initial, here I am, Lord, take all this stuff, that he then starts the process, right? That he starts to go through everything that needs to be cleaned out. All those things fall under Christ's oversight. Okay, so Christ is now over all of those things that we're struggling with. He's now in control of those areas, and he's helping us to gain the victory. However, we usually move a few personal items into some very small rooms in our lives. So let me grab this here. I'm going to use this illustration. So I got a bowl full of keys here. Okay, a bunch of keys right there. So what we do is we take some things and we kind of store those away. They don't necessarily have to be bad either, right? We're not keeping big things from God, but maybe some little things. So maybe we're keeping a sour spirit, right? We're going to put that in there. God, you don't need to. I still want to be grumpy once in a while. I'll hold on to this, okay? The rest of those all you. I'm going to hold on to this. Maybe it's an unhealthy habit. God, you can have everything. I'm going to keep my chewing tobacco. Don't worry about that, though. It's okay, God. Chewing tobacco is all me. Maybe it's, I like to gossip. I'm going to hold on to that one too, God. You can have the rest, but I really like talking about people. So this one's going to get locked up, okay? I'm going to keep this one for myself. So take this moment now to reflect on maybe some things that you've hidden away, some things that you haven't quite given to God, right? You just keep them in a little tiny room. And like I said, they don't have to be bad, right? They don't have to be big, bad things. They can just be little tiny things that we just want to hold on to for a certain reason. And it doesn't really matter why we've put them in the room, but we've put them in a room. We've locked them away in a little room inside of our heart. The issue with doing that is it represents our autonomy. It represents that self-preference, that we prefer to be in control a little bit. It helps us to hold on to that self-sovereignty. We lock a few items away, and every once in a while we can pull them out, right? We can say, okay, this I'm still in charge, right? Because I have hold of this item, not God, so it still keeps me in charge of everything. But Gary, I've given God all the keys I've had, right? It can't hurt to hold on to just this one, just this one right here. I like to say bad words once in a while. Let me put this in there. It's okay. God, don't worry about it. It's all right. I just want to hold on to it. Maybe one, maybe two, but you can have everything else. Everything else is all you. Let me just hold on to this one thing, right? But that's not really what he wants, though. It's not what he wants at all. God does not want 99% of them. He wants 100% of them. We can't claim to be totally sold out to God and still hold on to even one key. Can't claim to be sold out and hold on to one key. George D. Watson once said, the sellout consists of 3 commitments on our part. They're commitments on our part. 1, to be anything the Lord wants us to be. 2, do anything the Lord wants us to do. 3, suffer anything the Lord wants us to suffer. A lot of us sitting here today might not even know we have a key problem. I didn't really think I had a key problem until I did this sermon. And I found out I have a key problem, right? Let me put another one in my pocket. Another key problem, right? So such a problem, some of you guys have been Christians a long time. You might say, Gary, but I don't. And that's great. But we can still be proactive in the key problem, right? So they may lay dormant for months, years, as we travel down the road with Christ. We might not even know that there is a problem. But if you continue to read the Bible, pray, attend church regularly, enjoy the spiritual blessing of God, the key problem will eventually surface. Something will come up that you've kept tucked away that you didn't really know you were keeping tucked away. But by doing those things that I just mentioned, by being in prayer, by coming to church, by fellowshipping with one another, it sets us up for an excellent position for God to come in and help us turn that key right over to him before it turns into one where I'm not going to give it up willingly, right? So if you're there and you're doing these things, when that problem does arise, it makes it easy to turn it over because we haven't held on to it very long, right? But when it comes up, we can give it right away. So one more time, everybody with me? He must become greater, I must become less. So we must surrender all our hopes, dreams, goals, aspirations to His leadership. We must be willing to be led. And I know that's a huge problem. I have that problem. I think everybody has that problem. It's part of our nature. Adam and Eve, thanks a lot. You guys messed it up for us, right? We all have that problem where we don't really want to be led. But He has to get all the keys, right? So I got to give Him all of these, right? Here you go, God. You can have the easy ones. And then I've got to reach in here and start doing this too. Well, God, you can have this one back. And you can have that one. This one I really wanted to hold on to, but I can't be all in with that key. This one's got to go. And here's that one. It's called surrendering the unknown bundle. It's asking God to lead in areas of your life that you haven't even arrived to yet. It's being proactive in your life with God. It's praying for things that haven't even come yet. It's setting you up for that success for when something that does come up, you're able to turn it over. You're able to give up that control quickly. It's a total willingness to turn over the keys to the rooms that you don't even know exist yet. So Solomon, all of his wisdom, said the following in Proverbs 19:21. Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. We can try and envision all these plans of how life's going to be. The job I have, I'll hold that one, and the wife or husband I'm going to have, God, you can have the rest, but I'm going to pick that one out, and how I'm going to spoil my grandkids, that's my key, not yours, God. I'll take care of that. And my bank account, I'll hold on to that one. God, you can have the rest, but my bank account, that's all me, okay? Wrong. That's not what He wants, right? Our plans, what Solomon says, are nothing compared to the purpose that God has called us to, or will call us to if we give up control. So what does a person who gives up control look like? You might be asking that question. Well, the person who knows that God is the central fact of life, they feel the daily nearness of God, they see the constant evidence of God's love, offer self and gratitude to God, and they are a transformed person. That's what someone who's given up control looks like. We need to live as if God's new life He has given us is at work in us. But why do we have to live like it's at work in us, you may ask? Because it is. You have to believe that God's work is really happening in your life, and you have to live like it. We have to continue to live like it. So Paul told the Philippians, and he now tells us through the Bible, that we need to be confident that He who began a great work in us will carry it until completion, until the day of Christ Jesus. As mentioned earlier, this isn't a quick process. It's not one and done. It's not, God, take all this guilt and shame away, and then don't refine me anymore. I'm good. No, this is a thing that happens over and over and over again. And we have to be willing to let it happen over and over and over again. This next part, it really, when I talked to Pastor even, it was just so good what A.W. Tozer has to say. And Paul talks about being crucified with Christ. And I'm sure most of you have heard that, that verse, and you know all about it. But when I read this quote, it really gave me a better perspective because I just never really thought of it in these terms. But here's what he said. He said, to be crucified means, first, the man on the cross is faced in only one direction. Second, he's not going back. And third, he has no further plans of his own. Hung on the cross with Jesus, crucified with Christ. Therefore, I no longer live. You're hung on that cross. You cannot look behind you. There is no looking back. You're only facing forward now. So there's nothing to look back to. We're crucified with Christ. We're looking forward. The path is now set. You've been crucified with Him. There's no going back to the life that you already had. Your path is now straight ahead. Right? Straight ahead with Christ. And finally, you have no future plans. You're at the mercy of the cross now. There's no coming up with anything that you want to do. If you're truly crucified with Christ, now it's up to Him to decide how He wants to use you and how He's going to work through you. It's no longer about you and the plans that you want. All control is lost when you accept Jesus and you die to our sin. So essentially, when we give God all the keys to the rooms in our heart, we sign our name on the bottom of a blank page. We give Him everything which we are aware of and everything that may come in the future. He fills in the blank pages he sees fit. He is the author and finisher of our faith. Many of us have written our own lines. There's no doubt about it. I know I have. I've taken that blank piece of paper when I accepted Jesus, and I said, here's my name at the bottom, Jesus. I signed it, and let me jot down just a few things that I want out of my life before you write some stuff, right? I'm going to fill in some stuff, and it's going to have misspelled words, and it's going to have some poor grammar, no doubt, and it'll have little to no punctuation, but I'm going to write it down. So why not choose today to put the pen down and let God, the ultimate author and editor, do what he does best and write a masterpiece of your life? Why don't we put the pen down and say, I'm done writing my story. How about you write my story for me? Because in the end, he's the one that's going to be able to write a better story than we can for ourselves. So he's going to use you to point others to him, and he's going to draw you in a deeper relationship with him through that process. People will say, surrender your life to God, right? And that's what I used to think too. Surrender to God, surrender to God. Well, if you really stop and think about surrender's waving a white flag, hands up, don't shoot type of stuff, right? You're an enemy, so I'm going to surrender. And I've heard it said, that you are an enemy of God, and to an extent you are. But instead of that, instead of surrendering like an enemy who's been forced into it, right? Because oftentimes you think when someone waves a white flag or they have to put their hands up, they've run out of options, so now they're being forced to surrender. Instead of coming to Christ forced, why don't we come to God from a place of concentration or of consecration instead, right? And so consecration looks like this. Consecration is more like a loving child who made a gift for a parent, and they're proud of it, and they give it to the parent. Here it is, right? It's handmade. There's no white flag. So the wrapping paper, some of you parents, I don't know if you've ever gotten this, the wrapping paper could be old newspaper or just sheets out of a notebook, right? I've seen that before. The wrapping technique is not very good. There's probably tape all over, and it looks like a big giant ball of nothingness. And the gift inside could be inexpensive, and most likely it is. But the goal of the child's heart in doing that is to present something of him or herself to the parent. Right? It's to show, look how much I love you. Look how much I want you. Here's what I have, and this is all I have. I've taken all my materials, and I've taken this little inexpensive gift that I bought or I had, and I'm going to give it to you. So why? Well, that's kind of the area that we should be coming to God in the same way. So salvation is the gift that God gives us. I think most of us know that. That's the gift that he gives us. But consecration is the gift that we can give to God. We can give him. We don't have to be the most perfect and expensive thing to give to him. We don't have to be that. The fact of the matter is the gift is from the heart. It's willingly given, not forcibly surrendered. We are willingly coming to Christ and saying, here I am. Right? We have chosen to give God all of ourselves in that moment. We're saying, this is all I have. This is what I can give you, and here it is. Take it and do with it what you want, but I really want this relationship with you, right? So he did not create us to be robots that are programmed to worship him, and that's the thing about free will. And if you read C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters, Rebecca and I read this, and they joke in there, now it's fiction, but they joke in there and say, why did God do that? Free will was a mistake, but who wants to be worshiped and adored because you forced them into it? Nobody. You want to be loved and accepted freely, and God's no different. He wants us to come to him freely on our own accord. And when we do that, we're coming with all the rough edges of our lives. We're not coming completely refined. We're coming with rough edges, full of sin, broken, fill in the blanks of how we come to God. But God sees infinitely more potential and ability in us than we see in ourselves. So don't let your flaws and failures stop you from giving God control. It's okay. That's how he wants you to come. He wants you to come as you are. He wants you to come as that ball of newspaper, right, that's ripped and torn edges and falling apart and tape's not even holding it together. But that's how he wants us to come. He wants us to come that way. We don't have to come perfect already. He wants us to come broken and with an open heart and say, here I am, Lord. So Norman Vincent Peale said this: Ask God who made you to keep on remaking you. A daily process, a lifelong process. Becoming less so he can become greater. Thomas A. Kempis, I like this one, said this: carry the cross patiently and with perfect submission, and in the end it shall carry you. Patience, submit to his will, and in the end the cross will carry you in those moments that you don't think that you can carry on. That's when the cross will come in. Of course, I have to throw in some C.S. Lewis. I really like C.S. Lewis. So he says, if you live for the next world, you get this one in the deal. But if you live only for this world, you lose them both. Giving God the keys and letting him mold you and shape you the way that he wants. Giving him all of your life, all of it, not 99%, all of it. You receive the next world as well as this one. So live a life as you could live life of self-sovereignty and control, and you'll lose both of them. You'll lose this world and the next one. The price that we must pay is to give up complete control of our lives. That's the price that he's asking us to pay. Give up complete control. Here I am, Lord. You can have all of me. I'm done. I can't control this anymore. You have it all. We have to have a complete openness with God. We must declare personal bankruptcy. Here I am. Take it all. I've got nothing left. It's all you. So he must become greater. I must become less. I'm going to call the praise team up, and I'm going to tell you guys a final story as they get ready. So you guys, praise team, can come up, and then as they're getting ready, I'll tell you this final story. I like to start with the story and end with the story. And I hope that you guys were able to get something out of this. Maybe you can go home and examine some of the keys that you know you have, and maybe even pray about some of the ones that you don't know you have for God to show you. So this is a story about an old man in a Chinese village, okay? He was super poor, but he was the envy of wealthy kings. Everybody was envious of him because he had this beautiful white horse. The kings offered him lots of money. We'll give you whatever you want. This horse is amazing. It's beautiful. Take it. But the old man loved the horse. He loved it as a friend, and he refused to sell. One morning, the old man discovered that the horse was not in the stable. The village all gathered and called him a fool for not selling the horse when he could have. Think about it. The guy could have got a lot of money. Said, I love this horse. I'm keeping it. Now it's gone. So all the villagers were like, hey, you messed up, buddy. You should have sold that horse. They called the loss of the horse a terrible misfortune and a lost opportunity. But here's what the old man said to him. He said, who knows? Could be misfortune. It could be a blessing. Only God knows. The people thought the old man had gone mad. He hadn't gone mad. He had just surrendered. After 15 days, the horses suddenly returned. It hadn't been stolen, but it had escaped to the wilderness. And not only did the horse come back, but it also brought back a dozen wild horses with it. Right? So now the poor man has multiple horses in his stable. The people all gathered. You were right. It wasn't a misfortune. The loss of a horse was a blessing. Now they're all excited for the guy, right? The old man replied, who knows? It could be a blessing. Maybe not. Only God knows. So the old man had a young son who started to train the wild horses, and just a week later he was thrown from a horse. Both his legs were badly broken. The people gathered around again. These people, I don't know, they really love this guy's misfortune. You were right. The return of your horse was not a blessing after all, they said. It's a terrible misfortune. Your only son lost his legs, and in your old age, he was your only support. Now you're poorer than ever. Right? These guys are all just heaping on this poor man, right? And he still sticks with it. The old man said, who knows? It could be a misfortune, or it could be a blessing. Only God knows. A few weeks later, the country went to war. All the young men of the town were forcibly taken to serve in the military, where they all died in a dreadful battle. Because he was lame, the only one not taken was the old man's son. The father learned that giving up control is the prerequisite for peace. So many of us want peace, and we search for it hourly, daily, monthly, and it's available to us. Peace comes through accepting Jesus, and most of us know that, and having a deep, meaningful relationship with God the Father. In order to have that peace, we must give up control. And without knowing it, holding on to certain keys that allow us to feel like we're in control may be the very keys that cause our unrest or turmoil. They may be the very thing that causes us not to have peace. So we have to turn over all the keys to the rooms that we know about, and even the rooms that we don't yet know about. He must become greater. I must become less. He must have all of us, and we must relinquish the throne to the one and only true King Jesus. So if you guys want to lead in Holy Forever, you working it. You guys can stand up with the praise team as we close here.